Hey everyone, so per the title, I'm going to be discussing only a couple or a few reasons why evolution fails to explain the emergence of biological life. And I'm loosely basing this discussion on the book called 2084 by John Lennox. John Lennox is a Christian, but I'm not. I'm an atheist. Still, I think evolution is useful up to a certain point. And when we go beyond that point, just like young Earth creationists, we find ourselves in very dangerous and credulous terrain. Let's get right into it. Alright, so as mentioned, evolution is tremendously useful. Just briefly, here's why I endorse the theory. I think it quite elegantly explains the variations we see within species. Interestingly, that's only as far as Charles Darwin was willing to go. Yes, when we're talking about fur density, beak length, or any other trait of an organism, for which there's a tremendous amount of variation given its unique environment, evolution is profoundly useful and empirical. I would add that it doesn't even bother me so much to concede that evolution may explain the divergence of a particular species of organism into entirely different ones. Now, there's an incredible amount of conflict on this question alone, even among hard-nosed evolutionists. But I'm not closed-minded to it. After all, according to the experts, there's far more that separates a domestic house cat from a lion than the distance which divides humans and higher primates. And you'd be pretty outnumbered to claim cats and lions are not related, so speculations of this kind don't really bother me. What I do find extremely arrogant and dubious, however, is when educators go that one step further and claim that evolution explains life itself. That to me is about as faith-based and unscientific as any religion I've observed. If you hold this view, more power to you. Everyone has a right to identify with and practice whatever faith they like. But you have no right to call it science. It's pure speculation, and the sooner we admit that, the better we'll all be for it. Unlike Professor Lennox, I don't feel this position commits me to any iteration of theism or even deism for that matter. It is to suggest, as I mentioned earlier, that evolution goes only so far. Now here's why some atheists feel the theory of evolution adequately accounts for the emergence of biological life. All the way back in 1953, there was a famous experiment that two chemists by the name of Stanley Miller and Harold Urey conducted. Their findings won them a Nobel Prize, by the way. And what they did was mix various chemicals believed to exist in the early history of our planet's atmosphere. Then they applied electric shock to it, which indeed returned the favor when they observed amino acids as the mixture settled. Amino acids are frequently referred to as the building blocks of life. So everyone went home that day feeling a deep mystery of our origins was solved in an honest day's work. Take a little bit of chemistry, apply a little physics, out pops the genie from the lamp, biological life. Everyone was amazed. It kind of makes you sad you didn't think of it yourself, huh? Well, I feel ya. Well, not so fast. While the laboratory conditions may have mimicked the situation you'd expect to see early in our terrestrial history, there's a substantial amount of input missing here. Consider one quote Dr. Lennox included in his book. It was submitted by a professor of chemistry, nanotechnology, and computer science, Mr. James Tour. He explains, "Let's just assume that all the molecules we think may be needed to construct a cell are available in the requisite chemical and stereochemical purities. Let's assume that these molecules can be separated and delivered to a well-equipped laboratory. Let's also assume that the millions of articles comprising the chemical and biological literature are readily accessible to us. How might we build a cell? It's not enough to just have the chemicals on hand. The relationship between the nucleotides and everything else must be specified, and for this, coding information is essential. DNA and RNA are the primary information carriers of the cell. No matter the medium life might have adopted at the very beginning, its information had to have come from somewhere. A string of nucleotides does not inherently encode anything. Let's assume that DNA and RNA are available in whatever sequence we desire." Unquote. Oh, and guess what? We're still not out of the woods. I've detailed this in other works. Have you any idea how mathematically impossible the odds are for the perfect combination of right-handed and left-handed amino acids to arrange themselves into RNA through random permutations alone? That's to say very little about how long a period conditions would have to remain stable, not only for the genetic material to emerge, but also survive long enough to develop a modulating self-replicator. And there's a lot more I could add to further complicate things for macroevolutionists, but we'll leave the scientific evidence there for now. There are other issues which are actually philosophically far more devastating than the scientific evidence. As an atheist, I don't want to postulate a God of the gaps justification for how such apparent design could have come about. I'm not doing that. There are many possibilities to consider before we suggest that a personal deity or God interfered in things. Although I agree with my religious friends who feel that time and chance, or Richard Dawkins' climbing mountain probable, simply sucks as a credible theory. The philosophical question here, among many, is this: are perfectly natural processes, even if they were able to explain our origins, in direct conflict with apparent design? Like, worded differently, does the fact that naturalist theories, which are not random in the way evolutionary theories are, does that commit anyone to assume any more than just that? The processes are intelligent. Now, I respect the opinions of John Lennox. They seem far more insightful than what I'm typically hearing from my fellow atheists. Despite our differences, I don't think it's unreasonable of Lennox to conclude that mechanical causes in no way compete with what he suspects are efficient or agent-type causes, any more than molecular agitation explains the boiling brew on my stove better than my penchant for a nice hot cup of Baker Street blend. Like, it's a fair point. But this only seems to dial back the question one step further, because if my taste for tea can be explained in just the same mechanical terms of the bubbling cauldron obeying the laws of molecular agitation, then we've just created another phantom to chase. Now, and I keep coming back to this whenever I think about this problem. I've seen a million debates on this. Why can't we just marvel at the beauty and coherence of it all and do our best to not make any more assumptions than we absolutely have to? What I'm saying is, let me be clear. I'm saying no God of the gaps, no Darwin of the gaps. Take that analogy I mentioned a moment ago about the angry teapot on my stove and my thirst, which caused me to stir for elevensies. Both can be seen as a state and an action, a noun or a verb. I'm the noun, okay? I'm the agent, efficient cause. Molecular agitation, the boiling teapot, that's the verb, that's the mechanical cause. The noun is doing what it does when it's a verb, and the verb is given a name so it can be discussed as a noun. The two are the exact same thing. There's no need for me to count the last hurdle, or to find some bottom, or to discover some unactualized actualizer or ground of non-contingence. Now, what's so messy about that approach? Towards the end of that chapter, Professor Lennox writes, "The suggestion that DNA was created by an intelligence is dangerous only to atheism, not to science," unquote. And I believe I agree with that, finding myself very much at odds with many atheists. Although if 2084 were my book, I might be tempted to write something like, "The suggestion that DNA is intelligent is dangerous only to an extremely dogmatic brand of physicalism, not necessarily atheism, not theism, and certainly not science." Tell me what you think of that below in the comments, all right? Do you think that problems with evolutionary theory or conceding evident intelligence in nature without recourse to random sequencing or time and necessity, do you feel that that undermines atheism? Let me know. Till next time, guys. Cheers. Hey guys, did you like this video? You know what to do. And if something I mentioned today resonated with you, click one of them cards on this screen. I have lots of related content sure to interest you. Thanks as always for your views, and we'll see you next time.